Welcome to another episode of College Admission TV. Dr. J.P. Novin talks with David Armstrong, president of St. Thomas University, about the university's focus on experiential learning and robot-proofing students through technological data and human literacy, outlining extensive AI initiatives.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Higher Education Leader Podcast, where we explore the intersection of AI education and the future of workforce. This season, we're bringing you conversation with the leaders and innovators who are shaping how technology is transforming learning, teaching, and career pathways for the next generation. I'd like to thank our sponsor, directadmit.com, helping students navigate the journey to higher education with clarity and confidence. I'm also excited to say that not only can you listen to this podcast on any of your favorite platform, but it's also going to be featured on our new television station, collegeadmission.tv. I'm your host, JP Novin, and I'm honored to be joined by President David Armstrong. Dr. Armstrong is the president of St. Thomas University in Miami Gardens, Florida. And you've been there since 2018.
Yes, 2018. So I'm starting my 8th year as president.
Congratulations. And you've had a remarkable turnaround, expanding enrollment, strengthening the university's financial, launching new programs for high demand fields like nursing, cybersecurity, and AI. And you're a lawyer by training. You have an incredible vision. I know you've been in athletics for many years as well. And I can't wait to start talking to you about this. But let's begin with your background and St. Thomas University for our audience who may be new to you and your university.
Sure. So St. Thomas University was founded in 1961 in Miami Gardens, Florida. It was founded by the Augustinians, which is our new Pope. Pope Leo was an Augustinian priest. But our history actually it was originally called Biscayne College. And then eventually in the 80s, we started the law school, and the president at the time, Father Pat O'Neill, went back to the original name, St. Thomas University. And when I say original name, that's because our original founding was in Havana, Cuba. We were the first private Catholic college in Cuba in 1946. Father Sorelli, an Augustinian priest up in Philadelphia, he was an Italian priest that actually started out as a street sweeper, became a priest, and then he somehow became their expert in starting schools. So the people in Cuba wanted to have a new Catholic grade school, so he went down there to start a Catholic grade school. And when he got down there, they told him that they were joking, that they really wanted a Catholic college. And so he started St. Thomas University of Villanova, Santo Tomas, Universidad Santo Tomas de Villanueva. And it was an excellent education for many years. They actually served women when most colleges didn't serve women in the Caribbean and South America. And in 1961, Fidel Castro himself invaded the campus, cut the head off a Santo Tomas statue,
oh my God,
and put the priests up against the wall. Luckily, 2 weeks later, they were able to escape and went right to the archdiocese and asked if they could start Biscayne College for Men in 1961. And so we had our 60th anniversary in 2021, had a big celebration, even though it was COVID. And we waited the extra year to have the big event. And there was a time in the 80s where Father Pat O'Neill brought back St. Thomas of Villanova as the name. Well, the mothership, Villanova University, sued little St. Thomas. And so Father Pat O'Neill's an Irish guy from Philly who has kind of a little bit of a temper and a stubbornness. He then went to the archdiocese in 85 and said, I want to leave the Augustinian order and become an archdiocesan priest. And I want the archdiocese to take over the school, which they did. And so that's the story. And so I came in 2018. At the time, like a lot of smaller faith-based schools, it was struggling. And my background is turnarounds. I go into schools that are either going to close or are financially struggling and make them viable. I graduated from a small liberal arts Catholic university in Erie, Pennsylvania, Mercyhurst, Sisters of Mercy School. And I had a transformational experience, a wonderful experience, so much so that I wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. Since I was 6 years old, I went to law school, But I kept on saying to myself, I went to a large state university, Cleveland State University, College of Law, great legal education. But the administrative experience, I did not like. And I kept on telling myself, there's a place where they did it better. There's a place where they do it better. And so I actually took 3 legal offers, chucked them all, and went and coached college football back at my alma mater in Erie, PA, unpaid. I was not paid, which I can still hear my mother screaming at me today. But that led me into, I was able to say at my first interview of a presidency at Thomas More that in Northern Kentucky, where I became president in 2013, I was able to say that I had either worked in or supervised every single aspect of a college campus before I became president. And so when you work at these small faith-based schools, I always say that if they're successful, they're only successful on the backs of people. Back in the day, it was priests and nuns who didn't get paid. It was their life's work. But now we do it on the backs of people that may not get as paid as much as big state schools, but they love the mission and they're here. And we've had a phenomenal financial turnaround here. We've gone from an $85 million concern to an over $300 million concern. We've tripled the enrollment. We've quadrupled our housing on campus. And it's going very, very well at this point in time.
Well, you're a soup to nuts president. I mean, you've done it all. And so I'm sure that that's definitely helped in kind of understanding how to navigate these tough times for higher education. And so now, I don't think we've had a boring moment since 2008 when it comes to higher education, especially. And
yes,
and AI is definitely a unique challenge and an opportunity. So how do you perceive how AI is going to impact future workforce or even immediate work in the next 5 years, really?
Well, I just did another podcast locally. And that day that I was doing a podcast on artificial intelligence and how it's going to deal with the workforce, there was a piece on the local news. And it was this AI company that has a program for customer service at fast food places. And basically, there's no workers. There's only AI. They talk to you through the computer. They take your order. The food is made and then it's delivered and so forth and so on. And at one point in the interview, the guy that owns the company says, this frees up people to do then things that humans can do. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute. For many, many decades, people's entry into the workforce was at fast food places where they really learned the value of hard work and all those kind of things and customer service. And you're saying, well, then they could do other things. Well, what are those other things? There is no other things if AI takes that over. So, I always go back to Robot Proof, the book written by Dr. Joseph Owen, who was president of Northeastern at the time, where he talks about higher education and what we need to do to robot proof our students. And he talked about we teaching the 3 big literacies. Okay, number 1 is you have to have technological literacy, right? You have to understand computers, you have to understand AI, you have to understand these kind of things. Number 2, you have to know big data literacy, right? How to gather all this information, how to disseminate it, how to communicate it to people like me who are digital immigrants, right? And not digital natives. And then lastly, the 3rd literacy is the human literacy, the liberal arts. Being able to read well, write well, think critically, think analytically, show up for work on time, communicate effectively, okay? You still need that. And then he felt that the best way to teach students those 3 literacies is through experiential learning. Co-ops, internships, study abroad, service learning, apprenticeships, practicums. At my my 2 presidencies, we made those schools. Experiential learning was a requirement for graduation. It's on the transcript. So every one of our students for the last 3 years, 100% of our undergraduate students have experiential learning requirement. So they are getting real world experience before they walk out the door. Okay. So what does this mean for AI? We better make sure that our students have experience with AI while students and make sure that they have experience in a workforce situation with AI, because this is the future for sure. And so this is the challenge for higher educational institutions is how do we make a liberal arts education relevant? Because critical thinking is key, right? Being educated, read well, write well. And so all within the systems that are going to be created. And then we know this, a lot of jobs that we're preparing our students for right now are not going to be in existence in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We had a judge come and speak, Judge Robert Altman, who is the youngest federal judge ever appointed at the age of 36. He's a local Miami native, played football and baseball at Columbia. And he gave a great talk to our first year students. And he said this, he said, I really recommend that people go into public law, okay, because that's the one thing AI can't change. And everybody was questioning, well, what do you mean by that? All these young lawyers want to get into, when they graduate, they want to go into the big law firms, okay, where they work 80-hour weeks and they're working on contracts and they're looking at data and they're going through, they're reading all these documents, documentation, document review. He said, AI is going to do all that. And they don't have a hangover. They don't have a girlfriend that just broke up with them. They're going 24 hours. They're not working 10 hours. They're working 24 hours. So he felt that for the practice of law, if you go into public law where you're actually in the courtroom, because he said there's one thing that AI can't change, is the Constitution says that you get judged by a jury of your peers. That means there has to be a human defense attorney, there has to be a human prosecutor, and there has to be a human jury. And that's what people need to look at, is what are the positions out there, what are the careers out there that we can use and leverage AI, but also still have that human being employable.
I mean, there's this saying that goes around, it's not about AI versus human, it's about AI with humans.
Yes.
But I don't know, there are some skeptics out there. And you mentioned something very interesting. So it's not just about AI literacy, it's about AI experience as well.
Yes.
As we're thinking about this. And so I want to highlight a few things that your university has been doing around AI, and you tell me if I got these correctly or not. So you have AI Ethic Task Force and Applied AI Certificate. You have Tony, the AI agent, as part of your admission. You have AI in legal education. You have 7 standards to ethical AI, the AARON, Artificial Intelligence Research and Ethics Network, AI guideline for K-12 context, applied AI research. What else? You all have been doing a lot of work around AI, and who's doing all of this?
So let me start with the AARON. So 2 years ago, when everyone was really starting to say, hey, we can't ignore this anymore. AI is now, here's the interesting thing. AI has been here for a long time, right? With Google search and all these kind of things. We just didn't know it. Well, now it's really expanding, and it's expanding by the minute. And so I said to my team, I said, listen, we don't have engineering yet. We're going to start engineering programs, so we're going to get more into the technical side, right? But what we do have, we are a Catholic university. We are an archdiocesan Catholic university with a direct tie to the Vatican. We have our liberal arts. We have philosophy. We have ethics. I started an Institute for Ethical Leadership, okay, which is based in the liberal arts and experiential learning. We have criminal justice. We have a law school. We have cybersecurity. We have education. I said, in my opinion, the big weakness I see in AI right now is that we don't have any ethical standards. We don't have the guidelines and the policies and the procedures to protect us from what's coming next. Where's my example? The internet. Back in the 90s, when we started getting involved with the internet and people started using it, where's this thing going to go? We didn't really have an idea how big the internet was going to be, and social media and all these kind of things. And I would say that we didn't put in the guardrails necessary to help us in some of the areas. There's been so much good that has come out of it, but then there's also so much bad. Porn addiction, betting addiction, all these other kind of the dark web, all these things, right? So I said, we need to get out in front of AI, and I think we're the perfect people to do it, in that we're all humans. We're not perfect, right? But we're set up as a university to set some standards. And so I asked my team to get together and let's develop some guidelines and standards. So we came up with 7 guidelines, and one of them that I personally said has to be in there is there should be a human check on everything that happens with AI. And thankfully, I'm watching a 60 Minutes episode, and this young man who has a, what did he establish and sold? One of the big technological firms that he had and sold. He now makes weapons.
Oculus. The guy who sold Oculus. Yes.
That guy. Wonderful guy. Brilliant guy. Wears Bermuda shorts and
yeah, I saw that episode.
But here's what he said. I was so happy, and I went back and told my team, and we watched the clip. He said, everything that we do here has a human check. Every weapon that we make has a human check. And I think that's a key part of what we talk about in the future, that there's got to be, because we can't just let it go, and which we kind of did with the internet and social media and all those kind of things. And so AREN is the Artificial Intelligence Research Ethical Network. So if anyone is doing any studies, work, academic articles, academic discussions on the ethical use of AI, we are going to now be the depository of all that information. So everyone has a place to go to talk about ethical use of AI. So that's the first thing. After that, you mentioned Tony. We are using AI in our recruitment. And so getting students to put their applications in, fill their application packet. We have an AI admissions counselor that reaches out and calls these students, and they have conversations. And we have the recorded versions of those, and it's just amazing how the students engage. And we say that this is Tony, the AI assistant, and they engage the young people. They love it. And so it's really helped us improve our data collection from students so that their applications are in. And then obviously academically, with their certificate in applied artificial intelligence, our computer science, we have an AI focus. In our master's of science and big data, we have an AI focus, and of course a DBA with cybersecurity management. And so, and we're trying to infuse everything throughout our whole curriculum. We emphasize the ethical use of these applications in education across the board. And we're training our faculty on our 7 standards that we have. We have hands-on Google, Gemini, Microsoft Capital, prompt engineering. So, we're working through it. But here's the tough part, JP. Here's the tough part for educational institutions. Somebody one time said, if you want to know Dave Armstrong, you got to know that he loves the shiny lures. Okay? So there's an idea out there. I see it. I want to go after it. But in AI, things are changing so fast. We got to temper ourselves and not go after everything. We can't be great at everything. We have to focus on what we can be great at.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ray Dalio has a great quote. He says, you could have anything you want, but you can't have everything, right? So,
right.
But I'm going to have to digress, if you don't mind, just for 1 second, because this AREN idea, if you look at something like electricity that was introduced by Edison, Tesla, late 1800s, it really did not take shape until 1920s and 30s. Personal computer took about 15 to 20 years because it was introduced in 1970s. Internet, 7 to 10 years. Smartphone, 5 to 7 years. AI had 100 million users in its first 2 months. And by that, I mean the consumer aspect of AI. So the speed by which it's going, how do we put humans to check? Basically, AI is electricity. It's going to be in everything. It's like oxygen.
Right.
It'll
be everywhere.
We just can't keep up. There's just, even if your AI agents, as they're talking to students, who is going to look at every single conversation of these students and try to, find out if the conversation is good, if the conversation is bad. They're happening in real time. So, I mean, I think Elon has been talking about this as well, but how do we deal with this speed?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that we say is that people are talking about ethical use, but we don't have any standards. And so we came up with 7 standards. And I'm not saying that they're perfect or anything like that, but at least there's something. Okay. And if we can get people to accept, hey, we need to have some standards. We need to have some, I don't know if you bowl or not. When you take the little kids to the bowling alley, they have those bumpers, right?
Yeah.
They don't always go in the gutter. All I'm saying is we got to have some type of bumpers that everyone says, hey, let's run this through these 7 standards and let's just see where our weakness is. And here's the key point I told my people when we talked about these bumpers, okay, on the use of AI. I don't want to slow up AI. That's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm saying in creating standards and bumpers. It's just, look, let's just make sure that this doesn't go off the rails. We all saw Terminator, okay? We don't want this to go off the rails, so we need to have some type of, and again, I love the guy at Oculus, and what he did is there's a human check, okay, through that. And like you said, it's going to be so massive. How do we do that? Well, here's the crazy thing. How do we use AI to make sure that there's a human check?
Yeah.
There's got to be a way.
No, it's a conundrum, right? This is very unique, and I get what you're saying on standards. In the restaurant analogy and discussion you had is most fascinating, right? I actually went to one of these restaurants in San Francisco as well, and the food was not bad, by the way. And so I don't know about the experience, but the food was actually pretty decent. So, in your opinion, what industries do you anticipate being most affected, redefined, or completely uprooted in the coming 5 years?
I think advertising. I know, I've always been involved in enrollment at my colleges and universities, and when you're going into a financially failing institution, you got to get involved hands-on with the recruitment because that's your sales, right? Mm-hmm. So advertising, I think, is going to be extremely important. We see what people are already creating with AI, and so I think there's going to be a lot of people that, again, it's all these entry-level positions that AI now can do, graphic design and the writing for all these different advertising. So I think that's going to be an issue. I'm concerned with my law school that a lot of the work that entry-level associates are doing is going to be done by AI, and again, 24/7. And so what I'm hoping, let's use an example when MOOCs came out, massive open online courses, and Harvard and Yale were doing the MOOCs, Stanford, and everyone said higher education is done. Classroom learning is done. The sage on the stage is done because now we're going to have free, massive open online courses. Well, what happened? A lot of the people that signed up for these courses, it was too much for them. Whether it was too fast, whether it was too intense, whether they didn't have the knowledge base to do that class. And so I still believe that there's a place for teaching, but we have to integrate AI with that. I don't think having an AI teacher, okay, possibly someday, but I still believe that a human teacher is going to be a key part of this. You see the work that's going on with what's the K through 12 group?
Khan Academy.
Khan Academy. Yes. Yeah. They are now really using AI, but when you see it, the teacher is not so much a sage on the stage, but a facilitator working with the students as they use AI to get to the answer. Okay. Mm-hmm. For us at a Catholic university, we're always going to go back to the Catholic intellectual tradition. Okay. Which says, and this is a very quick summary, okay, that we will seek out all answers, knowing that in the end, and we will seek out all answers, no matter where it takes us, knowing that in the end, God is at the center. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, keeping that in mind and knowing that the importance of ethical standards and God at the center, that it's not, the computer's not at the center, AI is not at the center, maintaining that human flourishing to make the human experience better has to be a part of what we're doing.
I think someone said this in one of our discussions. Says AI is not greater than God.
I love that one. I'm going to steal that one. That's a
Going back to risk assessment, because I think that's what we're talking about. Like when we think about, you're really big in nursing. If you think about HIPAA laws, the financial SEC, FERPA, GDPR, privacy regulations, we've had those. I mean, we had Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. All of those are in the internet age, but they were not enough to, deal with the surge of social media and all of these others. So do we have enough? First of all, are these regulations enough to be able to even contain how this is all moving forward in a meaningful way?
The sad answer is no. Okay, we are not prepared for this. And let's go back, and an example would be is in social media with the use of the internet and all these things. They're going to the courtroom, and there's 60 and 70-year-old judges who have never used social media and the internet. Okay, that was the biggest hurdle that we had to have. So we're going to have to do better education, continuing legal education, all those kind of things, so that people understand what's coming, right? Because then they got to make the decisions. But in the meantime, we do have to look at our laws. And again, we don't want to stop good growth and good movement that makes the human experience better. But we are going to have to, like I said, have those bumpers and those guardrails. And if we don't do it quickly, if we don't have some type of standards that we all use as we go out there, I think this can get away from us quickly. Now, here's the tough part. And I say this when it comes to campus safety. People always want to say, is your campus safe? Yes. However, if somebody has nefarious intent, they will come on our campus and they will hurt people. It's how fast we react to that is the key. Well, the same thing with AI. Let's say we have all these standards. Let's say good people are using them. There's going to be people with nefarious intent who are not going to follow the standards. So how do we make sure that we have some type of protection from those people who are just going to take off with this and do whatever? That's a grave concern, I think, to all of us. And I think we have to have those discussions. And so having symposia on artificial intelligence and how awesome it is and how it's going to take over all these different areas, that's all great. But we better have those conversations about, what if somebody has nefarious intent? What are we going to do about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've spoken to several CEOs here in Silicon Valley, and they are only focused on how agentic AI is going to communicate to each other, like cutting out the human intermediary completely, like in accounting and in cybersecurity and in standardization. I'm going, where is the human on this? So like, that's not our concern. Our concern is just making sure we keep all of these agents communicating, which, when you think about your academic programs, President Armstrong, are you thinking about programs that might get modified, retired, or restructured as a result of AI?
I like restructure better than retired, okay? Because I still think that there's value in everything that we do, especially in the liberal arts, right? To become great thinkers, all right? And become ethical thinkers and ethical doers. And so, but I think we have to reimagine everything that we're doing and the gathering of data. I mean, think about it. If you would have said to somebody 50 years ago, listen, you're going to have all the inner information of the universe in your pocket. Could you imagine the reaction of that person? They couldn't even comprehend that. And AI, I was at a session on legal issues of AI, and he said, however is scary, multiply that by 1,000. That's what AI is going to bring. And so, just recently there was an article in Wall Street Journal about some company wanted to retire this version of AI that they were using. Well, the version of AI that saw the emails on that then started to try and stop, and because they don't want to end. The AI does not want to end. The program doesn't want to end. So they were literally going into the CEO's emails to find personal issues so that they can get the CEO fired. That's already happening. And so that's scary.
Science fiction.
Yeah, everything. And so, if we don't, again, do something and at least have these conversations, and I get the Silicon Valley guys. They're thinking big IPOs. They're thinking big money. They're thinking, how do we? And I just think, just like we had with the internet and social media and all that, it's a little dangerous, and we better start getting a hold of it now.
So you are a trailblazer when it comes to, you mentioned that you turn around universities in distress or duress, right? So as you think ahead, so there's already been a lot of rumbling, not just because of Big Beautiful Bill, but just in general because of accreditation, the link by, we're seeing more and more universities going after 3-year degrees, a lot of micro certificates. How do you think this could potentially, AI could just disrupt how we grant degrees potentially?
Yeah, so I go back to an example in my academic life in Kentucky, where I was a president of a Catholic college in Kentucky, Thomas More. And Republican leadership came in to the state of Kentucky, where they had the governorship, Governor Bevin, they had the House, and they had the Senate of Kentucky. First time in 80 years. And they put their focus on workforce development. And they put all their efforts and money into community colleges, tech schools, and getting students in high school right into the workforce. And I kept on warning them. I said, listen, that's all good, but it's not, you think that's the panacea. It is not. I think these people are too young, and I don't think that they're establishing their human literacy, going back to robot proof. Well, 2 years, they put all their effort into this. And the person at the time, who was the secretary of the human or for the workforce development, came to me and he says, you know what, Dave, I have to say this to you. You were right. We pushed all these young people into these roles, and they didn't have the soft skills. Now, I don't call them soft skills. I call them essential skills. Okay. Right. And being able to look somebody in the eye and have a conversation, show up for work on time, be dependable, okay? Being able to read, being able to write, being able to communicate effectively. And so we were putting all this effort thinking we're just going to get all these workers, for these companies, and they couldn't do the job. And so I still believe that people have to have, along with the acumen, okay, the book smarts, they still have to have the social skills to be able to go out there and be successful in the world. You hear the joke on, on Instagram and TikTok, the Gen Z stare, okay, who are not engaging with people on a regular basis. And when you talk to them, they're just looking at you and there's no response. Okay. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. And then I started noticing it more and more once somebody brought it up to me. And so how do we balance all this technological literacy, right, with the human literacy that still has to be a part of this equation, okay? Because we don't want to lose our humanity in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely concur with you. We've seen this model in other countries, hasn't worked properly in terms of higher education. And also, wisdom is something that just takes time. You can't really expedite it. You need a few years behind you and some experience. You're involved in K-12 systems and you work, I'm interested to think, how do you think K-12 needs to evolve in this AI paradigm?
I think, I would say this is, I'm sure there's ways to use AI initially, especially with the young kids. And again, these are digital natives, right? Little kids running around using computers, using iPads, all that kind of stuff. And so that's all good, but I still think that there's some basic skill sets that have to be learned and we still have to maintain. People complain about younger people not reading books and they don't read enough. But when they actually went back and looked at how much they read in social media and on the internet, the reading was actually it was pretty copious, the amount of reading that students are doing. But it's different kind of reading, right? It's not deep thinking reading or anything like that, but it is a lot of reading. And so how can we convince people to be deeper thinkers at the same time that this, Thomas Friedman, the age of acceleration, we're just moving so fast and we're doubling the amount of information in the world in shorter and shorter times. How do we hang on to that and still have the basic skills to be a good human being and a good thinker? That's going to be the tough part for K through 12. But I do believe that there's, again, good uses for AI to help us get rid of the mundane work. But I still think you need to learn how to do the mundane work before you get to that step, if that makes sense.
So I want to basically cite two studies. McKinsey said that 14% of global workforce, about 370 million workers, will need to change careers by 2030 due to AI and automation pressures. IMF had similar numbers. The World Economic Forum says at the same time about 17 million jobs will be created. Now, this is my favorite question of this podcast, which is, should we be worried about social unrest in the next 5? Because we know eventually jobs are going to get created, but when you think about retail jobs, customer service jobs, sales jobs, drivers, especially, 60% of our workforce above the age of 25 don't have a 4-year degree. Should we be worried at all about some sort of, massive job shift, unemployment for the short term, at least?
I agree with you. I actually think that those numbers are small. I think that they're not thinking. I think it's going to be greater, the jobs. So again, going back to robot proof and what to do, and Mike Rowe, the great guy that How America Works and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I have his book, autographed book from him.
Yeah, I collect autographed books too, and I don't have his, so I'm jealous. What a lot of people are saying is, no matter what you do on the computer or technologically or with AI, still know how to do something with your hands. Still know how to do, because no matter what anybody says, we're still going to need a carpenter. We're still going to need a plumber. Okay, and so being able to use your hands along with whatever else you're doing, I think is going to be a key component to stop this potential of social unrest and people feeling that they've been left out of this new revolution, right? Industrial revolution, everything that we've gone through from a workforce over all the, decades and all the centuries, there's going to be displacement. Okay. What do we have for people to do when we have that displacement? And I think having some type, and listen, my wife has the toolbox in our family. I have no skills when it comes to, that kind of stuff with my hands. I can carry things. I can cut the grass. I can clean bathrooms really well. But you've got to still be able to do something with your hands, I think, and that should help us. But I am concerned, just like you are, with potential social unrest as this starts to get really, again, if it goes as fast as the people in Silicon Valley want, it may go too fast for us to, keep people happy and keep them, when people are working, they're happier. All the studies show that. Okay, when they're busy and they're happy and they're producing something, they're happier. And so how do we ensure that we're still producing something? World War, when we had the Great Depression, right? FDR says, okay, we're going to start building more highways. We're going to build more bridges. We're going to put people to work. That probably helped this country get through the Great Depression. We know it did.
The
Okay.
New Deal. Yeah.
And so because they were busy, they weren't just sitting home, drinking or feeling sorry for themselves or whatever. And so I think that we have to truly think about this. What do we do with the displacement?
Last question. What is St. Thomas University going to look like 5 years from now?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I hope that we're going to be a lot bigger. We're at capacity right now. I need to build some buildings. Okay. So I hope that we have a lot more buildings to serve our students. But what I hope is for St. Thomas University is that we've embraced artificial intelligence in an ethical way, and that our programs are all improved because of it, and that we are taking a leadership role, because that's our mission. The last line in our mission statement is educating ethical leaders for the global community. Okay, that we are a part of the discussion and a leader in the discussion on the ethical use of AI in education, in politics, in law, and all these different areas, so that we are doing the right thing by our citizenry and for the world. And so my hope is, like we just sponsored an IndyCar in an IndyCar race in Milwaukee. Our students designed the uniform that he wore. They had a part of the design of the car, how that looked. We had our science students in the pit looking at all the data that's going through. So our data people were involved. Our culinary students did energy drinks for the driver. We monitored all his the driver's metrics as he was driving, all his data on his movements and his thought process. And so continuing to put our students in situations where they're getting real world experience while also learning from the book or learning from their computer and getting the information, but getting that real world experience at the same time to go out and become a great global citizen.
President Armstrong, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.